Sego. My name is Andrew DeLille, and the son of Chief Andrew T. DeLille. And this week I'd like to tell you a little bit about how we celebrate these legends. As Native people, we put these legends to remind ourselves of where we come from, our culture, and what our people are all about. And today I'd like to talk to you about the carving of stone. Now, this stone was carved by my friend. His name was Stephen McCumber. He comes from Ganawage here. He lived in Ganawage all his life. And the stories that I was telling you in the creation involved the creation of the providers, the three sister providers. And you could see them inlaid in the stone. Here is the corn and the bean and the squash, somewhere down here. And how we came to develop these ideas, develop the use of the stone. Actually, this stone comes from North Carolina. We can't get this stone around here. So we go and mine these stones ourselves. And the artist that created this piece here, he goes down on his own. He rents a truck, and he mines the stones himself and then brings them back up here. He takes them maybe 3 days to develop a lump of stone into a beautiful carving like this. Now I'd like to tell you about a little bit about the primitive art in respect to native art, and where it came from, and how it's been developed over the years and over the generations. Now, a long time ago, our people used to celebrate their activities by a dance, a form of dance, and how they put into dance. They tried to describe how the hunt went. If they were hunting at the time, they came back with the kill, which was probably a moose or a caribou or something. And they came onto the reserve, into the community, and these animals were distributed through all the families in the reserve, on the settlement at that time. And at night, in the evening, they would celebrate the hunting that had taken place during the day, and they would put on the skins of the animals and dance and sing songs about the hunt and describe how the hunt took place and how the warrior went out and killed the animal. So in the dance itself, you could see the movement and the movements of the animals. One person would take on to act out the animal running through the woods, and the hunter himself, the warrior, would be dancing, and he'd be chasing this other person around. And this would tell the people of the community how the hunt took place and how the kill was actually done. So getting back to what I'm trying to explain to you is that how these celebrations continued. We're always reminded about events that happened in the past by putting these events on stone, such as this, or on other items, our clothing. We decorate our clothing with symbols. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit about this basket here. See, the design here is very primitive, and what it involves is the taking of the bark, birch bark in this case, from the tree. And on the inside of the bark, there's a resin that's left by the sap. Now, how this is done is it's scratched. The resin is scratched off in this area here, and it leaves this design here. Now, this is an old way of almost like printmaking. So what happens here is the design comes through naturally with the sap. Okay. Now, a long time ago, our people didn't have the tools that we have today. So what they did was scratch the symbols of their hunt, like the animal that they were hunting, the deer. You see cave drawings, and these were scratched with stones onto the walls of the caves. Okay, now today we go into these caves and we find them, and we find the art. What are these people trying to tell us? Well, in those days, they're telling us the actions of how the hunt took place and how they celebrated and reminded themselves how they provided for themselves. They put it right on the wall of their cave where they were living at the time. Also, the symbols that were used they were markings to make the difference of territories between hunters. One family would be hunting in this territory, so he would go on the four corners, four directions, and he would make symbols on the ground, on a stone, or on a tree to say that this was his territory and this is where he would be hunting this season. Okay. Now, over the years, we took these designs and symbols and we used other materials to celebrate these actions. For example, in the showcase here, we have symbols of the eagle on these chokers, and the chokers are made out of bone, animal bone. And we're using beads today, which are made actually in Czechoslovakia. And that's what I would like to talk to you about, is how we came to use these beads and items that we don't see, that are not native to this area. A long time ago, not so long ago, we used shell to make beads. We used to make beads out of shells, and what we used it for was what is known as wampum, and these wampum beads were used strung in a loom fashion to create a design such as the belt that you see on the bottom. Now, these were used in the form of money and also used as a symbol for government. Now, we use these belts to describe the activities of our council and the politics of our nation. So, in those days, there was no beads, so when the glass beads, when the arrival of the white people came, the non-Indian people, they brought these beads with them. And what they did was trade with the native people. And the native people at that time had the animals and the skins, furs, and the products to trade with the non-Indian people. So they gave the Indian people beads and so forth. So not too long ago, beads became popular during the Depression years, especially in Ganawage. Around the 1930s, there was a shortage, of course, of work, and there was a shortage of food. So the government came to Ganawage, and they gave us, instead of giving us money, because money again was scarce at the time, they gave us beads and materials to work with. And what came from it was the development of all these different styles that I was showing to you a minute ago. Our people worked in their homes. They created all different kinds of Indian craft, and they're using the beads. They came up with designs, bringing back again our culture. So today, now, what I do, what I mentioned before, I was painting. I'm an artist for past 6 years, and what I'm doing is using just a different medium to do the same thing as my ancestors were doing. When I was explaining about primitive art, and in the past we used to carve on the walls and make pictures of the hunt and the celebration that we had in those days, and the events that happened during the day. Today we're using other materials to describe still these old beliefs and the old concepts, the old legends, and we still have to remind ourselves about where we come from and who we are as a people and a nation. Myself, what I've done is I developed what happened was I found out that I had a talent for painting on canvases. And what happened was, out of coincidence, we had a show in the store here, an art exhibition of Iroquois stone sculptures. And what I did was I brought 10 or so of my paintings, and it got a lot of attention, these paintings. So from there, on these paintings, as a matter of fact, was exactly that. I was reminding myself about my own culture. And at that point in my life, I was searching for myself, who I was and where I was from. So with that came my interest in the stories. I would go to elder people in the community in Ganawage, and I would ask them to tell me stories about the creation story, for example, or other legends. And what I would do is go home. I would take the paint and brushes and canvas, whatever I had at the time, and before I would forget, I'd put these images that I had inside of me on canvas. But at the same time, I'd try to put the feeling I had, and which is something that I haven't experienced for a long time. And this was the feeling, the pride and the new experience, the experience of learning about myself and my people and where we were coming from. So with this, I'd like to leave you until next time, and I hope you have a good week. And next week we'll be talking about the actual stories and paintings and how I have developed over the years. Thank you. Ona.
Give me the Sadigay Valley, there closer to heaven I'll be. For life in the Sadigay Valley, it's always like heaven to me.